The Allfather Odin is a very peculiar sort of chief deity. Despite having never met him, we are frequently told what type of person he is. Odin is someone who will go far enough to strangle a seeress to death just to know his future. He married a foreign goddess just to learn her abilities so that he could enact a treacherous plan. He tortured, imprisoned, and possibly even killed one of his own sons for assisting a race of people in escaping mass genocide, and allowed another of his sons to live with a curse for an entire century, fooling him into doing his bidding with false hopes of an end to the suffering. Odin is a being who is firmly seated in his own sense of paranoia and obsession with his own fate. He wants to avoid the Ragnarok prophecy with all of his being, as it has spelled his doom. This sounds incredibly familiar, right? A chief god paranoid of anything that could threaten their reign over their respective pantheon. A god who could even kill his own son because of prophecy or suspicion relating to one. The Greek counterpart to Odin, Zeus, has more in common with the Allfather than just being the chief gods of their pantheons. Zeus grew fearful of the marked warrior prophecy that depicted the end of his rule and had one of his own children sentenced to torture in the domain of death to avoid his fate, while killing another. Of course, we learn that Zeus's fears of his own demise were only heightened to the point of taking over his personality, driving him to be this obsessive tyrant hell-bent on self-preservation, once the prophesied marked warrior Kratos opened Pandora's box. The opening of the box released the contained evils from the great war between the Olympians and the Titans, infecting the entire world along with the gods, who all became power-hungry and paranoid along with falling victim to their own greatest evils. Zeus gave in to his fear of prophecy. Poseidon gave in to his anger over the destruction of his city Atlantis at the hands of Kratos. Hercules gave in to his envy of his brother Kratos' success. As the opening of Pandora's box is said to have affected the entire world, let's assume that everything outside of Greece was also stricken by the evils. The parallels between the attitudes of Zeus and Odin, along with other gods that we will get to, is no coincidence. The gods of the Norse world were infected by the evils of Pandora's box as well. To what extent is not certain, as we haven't really been introduced to many of the Norse gods, but the ones that we do know share the exact same evils with a few of the Olympians. We've already discussed the similarities between Zeus and Odin, and it wouldn't be too bold to assume that the box caused Odin to only become even more obsessed with Ragnarok, since his desperation to prevent it has caused him to do some progressively worse things the closer the dreaded day of his demise comes. Thor can be compared to Poseidon and Hades when it comes to the evils of the box. Poseidon's personal evil was his anger towards Kratos for being responsible for the destruction of Atlantis, while Hades' evil was the hatred he felt for Kratos for killing his wife, Persephone. Thor exhibits both of these evils when it comes to how he feels about the giants. Although Odin hated the giants himself and raised all of his children to hate them as well, he held some sort of restraint when it came to interacting with them. Thor, on the other hand, is known to have murdered any giant that he ever came across on sight. He even took joy in his mass genocide of the giants in Midgard. The pinnacle of Thor's hatred, though, could be directed at his greatest rival, the World Serpent, who he had fought to a stalemate during his genocidal campaign, and who he would fight again to the death once Ragnarok commences. Freya's own evil can be compared to that of Hephaestus, whose greatest negative quality was his own misery and ability to deceive others. Once Zeus tortured and disfigured Hephaestus, he grew full of sadness and depression. Once Kratos began his journey to find Hephaestus' greatest creation, Pandora, he lied to Kratos and sent him on a suicide mission in order to preserve Pandora's life. Freya is Hephaestus' parallel in this case with how she is miserable over being confined to Midgard and having to live with the hatred directed at her by her son, Balder, whose resentment was caused by Freya granting him his invulnerability, which also took away any sense of pleasure or feeling at all. When confronted about reversing Balder's condition, Freya said that there was no way to reverse it, which we know is a lie. A lie told so that she would never have to face the reality of her son's prophesied death, a lie that condemned Balder to a century of madness and depression. When you think about it, we kinda hit two birds with one stone in that last one, as Balder is also infected with the evils of the box, with his intense hatred for his own mother being one of his driving forces, on top of him going mad from his circumstances. There are only a handful of Norse gods possibly affected by Kratos opening Pandora's box. Perhaps when more of them are introduced to us, we will be able to make even more comparisons and draw additional parallels between the Norse and Greek gods. The more we discuss this topic, the more that things seem deliberate, so to speak. Could all of this just be sheer coincidence, or is it part of the God of War director's master plan? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this little theory or whatever, make sure you leave a like. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, until next time.